this one in place of flowers, saffron water, incense, and all the partner of the four planets, the sun and moon, and Guru Ratna Mandala to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, I go listening to teachings and so forth. I attain Buddhahood. That's my great. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, I go until I'm enlightened. By thus listening to teachings and so forth, I attain Buddhahood. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, I go until I'm enlightened. By thus listening to teachings and so forth, I attain Buddhahood in all the benefit. That's my greatest.
What was that? Sanya Brahma, Yella Sandri Testilichi Shirotini. Oh, that and the Sanya Malakarishi Orasana Sanjur Molam Nagi, Yella Tumpatishin to Orba, Patichida, Society Chancha like Kachimbu, him Kachimbu shower, Tetama, and so Namju. Also, that Shokata Yamleta Watach Kartavachana Yella to Bad Yella, Society Chanchi to Yoga Chiritirva. The Lamdem Gombal, Lamdem Contugal Church Nala, Yella to Badi Yoreta. That's a massive agin Yamlet to the Karchapana Yella to Badi Yorva. Yes. Or to certification pushing it, Yella to Bahakot machine. Some accurate your Taya and your Yankushidena is was our riot at the Kibar your teaching about teaching as some about to say.
Okay. So good afternoon to everyone. And being Sunday, we are giving the explanations of the King of Prayers, specifically the 7 limb practice. And this is a very important practice because it gathers the accumulations and purifies obscuration. And that you find it in almost any practice. For example, in relationship to the graduated path, the preliminary practices like the necklace of the fortunate has the 7 limb practice, and also within tantric practices one finds the 7 limb practice because this accumulation, gathering the accumulations and purification of obscurations is very important. And so while you are all familiar with it, if we explain it again and again, one will develop new understandings.
What to say that the love divided into some call letters, Chatsawata, Choba Bivani, on the Sarsavare, Tatri, Sumbahani, Dipashapa, Dipashabatan, and it. Kiwango thing, Karsa Dipashavata, and a Chesvera thing, Sana Samatijua. What to say today, or to see that?
Okay, so in terms of the 7 limb, the point we've reached is we've covered prostrations and the making of offerings. And today, what I plan to cover is the purification of negativity and rejoicing. Nice.
What to say? The Chitty that 6 days, Sancho Malamna gets 6 days. The Jasha that Timo again, Ludamata Tishi Kija, the Pataki Kiwachichaba, that Tamjetaki Soso Shasido. Or City to a touch that and that Sancho Malam de Tape, do Sanja Rank Korank, Sanja Koranko Sonova.
Really?
We should have touched him, which is the other there. Chadata that Sancho Molam teach down Koran, Molam Kikiabo Sigor, that Chisila Dana Yukaredo. They were the Pavetsila Sancho Molam says the Molam Kiawas and Executive see the Kodeva Marva.
Really?
Or to say that they to say that they or the Pashavatella 6 touch the Namju Chayamla Manchella Tati. Sanche Molam Nanki Yala do the Same color your Same color your chocho your doji your dos. Digital beauty Same Hakona, Chinny Chinishadari, the Hakona Yawarisam Yeti to Samsung.
Really? Okay. So in terms of this actual verse, long overpowered by attachment, aversion, and ignorance, countless evils I have committed with acts of body, speech, and mind. Each and every one of these I now confess. And so in general, this text is the actual word of the Buddha. It is a sutra, and it is known as the King of Prayers, which is what the English term we use to refer it. In Tibetan, it's referred to as the prayer of sublime actions or sublime conduct. And so it's a very precious text. And in terms of Tibetan practitioners, people know this 7 limb prayer of the King of Prayers by heart, and to know it or have memorized it is very good.
Oh, those cities, and the Tipash Shape, Tipasha, Tipasha. And the Tipa Masha was in Tipa Chamber, use on a Tivangita, Topakia, to what to the cake city or what was teacher was touch the Pasha, the Tipasha, the party courage in a car. You correct is our sanata, you want to some Shash, or Warva, Colonia to some Karujanita, Evangita, Lumaki, Luma is to make a what Lumaki Leche, and it's that Colon Koran some get to Jashadala, Colon Kevat some get for Lech Sasha Gorva. Take a light and the take on Colon Tether Table Lumaki Leche by not that telegram. Lechimbosa or to Sretu Cheta to Jashada Timo again Lutanga that she gilesido. The Batagi Chichapata Tamchetaki so shas. What's the unit to the Tiretadi? Or to Sida.
Okay, so that in terms of this limb of purification of negativity, if we do not purify negativity and once create a very strong negative karma, this acts as an interference to our generation of realization. And in terms of the negativity, we are purifying the causes are the any of the 3 afflictive emotions, the 3 poisons being attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And under the power of those, then engaging in actions of body and speech. So that even non-virtuous actions of body and speech. So even the arisal of the motivation itself, an afflicted emotion as the motivation itself, one accumulates a karma, and then when linked to that, one engages in actions of body or speech, then one is making a very strong karma.
Tatu Sreta Tipasha Mala, Anita Karkorsan Topshi Sankorva.
Yes.
Topshi Sambekoni Tipasha Bayanani Matai Dipa Kepachin, can mess it with your back to one. Topshi Kone to Tipasha Dire. Topshi Kone Tipasha Dukaratan, you want to Topshi said some kingerwa. Tengi top tang the Gamdo Cheterwa, Gamdo da Semge.
Yes.
Then you think it top Chetere, and the Gala, and the Pachabala, Jupache Churba,
Yes.
Dimason, San Kyosa, Kyosim Chedi, and a number soon chibet over there.
Yes.
The Chetinitagala, that changing it in the Sawan and Chigmes and Domsam Teadi, and Yapala Lord of it over there. The Galata Yabokunju top the Chidanki, what culture and Yabokunju to be say, get your.
Yes.
Rete yena tachna shuna la pe rapa chene shigina. Yembo kunchu ki top tata lamre chamala soba tenzuna la. Yembo kunchu ki top bukshi yiwa.
Yes.
Bukanga kyabde yiwa.
Yes.
Oh, chogo tenzo yore sa chogo tenzo la. Chidan chitire dode samula temba. Dode samula temba sido la tanga tu shijingi tola soba. Kashara nyingbola soba tenzo temba tenzo raba.
Yes.
Tenzo re, tenzo lomba ta tenzo lomba tenzo re. Tenyo tonyi komba.
Yes.
Tonyi komba tenzo re. Ne sungala temba. Ta sungala temba tenzo doji sembe ikya tenzo tenya tenzo raba.
Yes.
Doji sembe ikya tenya tenzo re. Ikala ta ten shengba sido ta che ten rawa ta chi kusu tu ten siya tene yorba.
Yes.
Kusu tu ten shengba siya tere. Ikala chopa la temba. Chopa la temba sana chopa piya la sopa tu zarwa. Chopa tenzo re. Ikala sen temba yorba. Sen temba sana sanje ki tsenga chopa rwa.
Really?
Sanje ki tsenga chopa sanje ta ula tungsha la sopa tenzo pe 먼저 생아 저열 와서 산지 줘버티기 한티포 타트에 용어로 담배나 그나 나타야 돈을 빼나 산지기 제가 업무는 마음문에 서서 하고 다 뜻들이기 제가 다 저기 다 어떻게 셀 템바서 들어봐.
Yes. Okay, so in general, to purify negativity, it needs to have the complete four opponent powers, and it's said with the four opponent powers complete, there's no negativity which cannot be purified. So that the four opponent powers, you are all familiar with. The first, the power of the basis, is the two, which is refuge and the awakening mind, bodhicitta. And then the next is regret, and thinking that that was a kind of unsuitable, mistaken action. Then the power of determination to turn away from that action, that you will definitely turn away and not create it in the future. And then the power of the antidote. So in general, the antidote is whatever virtuous action one does. But in the text, for example, in the Great Graduated Path text, it mentions 6. It gives an overview of 6 main actions, which is reciting the Sublime Sutras, referring to the perfection of wisdom sutras, including the Heart Sutra. Meditation on emptiness is the second. Then the mantras being like the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra. And then other bases, which refers to creating the bases such as representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, or stupa. So that's the 4th one. Then 5th is making offerings. And the 6th is reciting the name mantras of the Buddha. So, for example, in the 35 Buddha practice, where we recite the names of the mantras, but also it can be saying any of the name mantras of the Buddhas, like Om Mani Mani Mahamuni Soha.
What zore tigala tanda ta chanchu sem kombale la peta digpa ta peta sabche me batangzo chunju liu tambono la chanchu sem peyena la ta mangu zwe wa ta shita ki pe chanchu sem kombale ta te nyembo kunju tumna to yo ta te tanga ma ya kyunse kare ne mishirwa chanchu sem kombale ta digpa ta la shibi pe top chipare orwa.
Okay, then in addition to that, there is meditation on the spirit of awakening the bodhicitta mind, which is tremendously powerful purification of negativity. And this is specifically mentioned in the 1st chapter of the Bodhisattva's bodhisattva's way of life when it talks about the benefits of meditating on the bodhicitta. So this has a very powerful effect of purifying negativity. So I'm not sure why it wasn't included in the list, but definitely is a meditation that is very powerful purification.
Otus teaching it, touch that, Tisha chair digi, Tipashaya digi, Karisha digi, Maobala social up the Pampa Turtus and the Gode, Sanki Duvala, Demi Pampa Goden Toveki, Pacha Sharo, so large years or chick teaching. Take on la. That to just that the Muslim Guinean Boto Shara, taking in Boto is even the painting theatre. At the painting the dark could be the conversation with the to start to serve.
Yes. Okay, so then in terms of purification of negativity, this to engage in purification of negativity means that in terms of its benefit, that in the future oneself will attain the truth of cessation, which is the abandonment of the two obscurations. And then it is also a benefit that it acts as an antidote to the three afflictive emotions of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And another benefit also that it purifies whatever obscurations and negativities one has accumulated.
That the Yembucheta Karsa Tanda Depat Karakara Tagier, Topshi Chin, Topshi Sosogi Depa Kartagior, Senate, the education I have mentioned Sandra.
Yes.
That Mazu, thank you, Doctor, the jump to Chesterwa.
Right.
Jump to chair the Chanju is simple at that. Thank you, Chebeto with Tama to jump to chair the Mother. Sasha can make about and looking, let me get table. Tang is only careless about the Yorba.
Yes.
They tag you already.
Yes. Okay. Okay, then I thought it would also be useful to talk about what negativities we purify through using the four opponent powers. So in terms of the power of the basis, we have refuge and the awakening mind of bodhicitta. So in terms of refuge, it purifies the ripening results of previously accumulated karma. So ripening results that would produce lower realm rebirth.
What to say? That the new book country get talk. Letter to your impression that you're and number switch in the top Yorba.
Yes.
Number switch in the top Chebalatene and I'm going to make it to put the you think it to put the Chepa you to the new one you to Nishiwa.
Yes.
Tinin and Chepa you to the Chepa you think it. The pub Haberchi started. Chepa you think it Taberchene Karchi or Sanamato. Setila Mikibele Sayak, Sojuda Mikibele Sociala, Namdu Gawat in the Namashu Gawache de Yerwa, or Tendo Machetus.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then through the power of regret, this specifically purifies the resultant that of the cause, which the result that concords with the cause. The results being the results that concord with the cause. So there were two aspects to results that concord with the cause. There is actions that where the results concord with the cause, and experiential results concording with the cause. So it specifically purifies the actions that concord with the cause. So for example, if one engaged in actions of killing and so forth in this life and applied the power of regret, it would purify one's tendency to like that kind of action and to continue creating it.
우스로 왔다 치다네 간저 데딜라지 소주다 도나 마제바지네 긴도다가 소주를 제대로 마진벌레 규트 미트네 베토나 메게와레스메 도나 마제바지네 마진 메게와다 마지막에 로이메 주일 참았다 메게와드네 여러와
Yes.
그들 앞에 남편의 미트네 베 만sem네 제대데 가르기 대보르스나 개왕아마들은 그걸로 검시 전부치네 제 대기 제바 규트에서 वर 제바 규트게 대보르스 여러와
Yes.
어자디 어데디 텐데 티체디 가도르다 던다 데르와
Yes. So in general, when in this life one engages in killing and is kind of unconcerned about that, or stealing, sexual misconduct, lies, slander, any of these non-virtues, the fact that we do not restrain from them is because of strong familiarity in previous lives. And that familiarity would be referred to as actions where the result concord with the cause. So, yeah. So that through applying this opponent power, one ceases that aspect of karma.
어두서 트리타티가라 네팔 라르토 베톱 네팔 라르토 베톱기 가레 디박 디베 디박 카르타 거르스나 아니 다데
Honest.
다데 미케벨레키 테불라 안조 남케투 세바 미케벨레키 테불라 나미키 테부 킨테키 테부 다베 테부 세바
Yes.
다베 테부스도 롱초 갈미 여러와
Yes.
안조 베 소수 대사게 소수 내사게 사자 베 소수 롱바 기보 롱바 사자 기보 베 튕겐 정보 지 신도다 제 신라서 와데 그바 자주 돼서 봐봐 좋은데 또 사마 개왕함에 벌써래 레기 개벨레기 테부 단데레 디어와
Yes.
아 카실 롱바 카실라 베나 같이 베 벌써다 지금 되게 맞아 봐 먹고 용데 자주 돼서 봐봐 아 롱바 tunze tene pe 신도 데불라 소바도 마메 바 신라 소바도 마메 바페 와 킹에 마보 용다도 야 동바 대되게 미트족이 미게벨레기 단데 레데어바 어떻게도 제가 단다데 네팔 라르다 베토 노도 스파 또 진짜 그 미게바 제시기 대체만에 요셉 제네타 진짜 자원이네 제메서는 또 스파한테 미테 톰슨 템파이나 되게 어떻게 단데도 나면 단데스 다이 미게벨레 사이티 단데 많이 와다 소 롱조 포스임 써봐야서 된데를 받기 그랬어요 왔다도
Okay. So then the determination to turn away from the action, the power of the determination to turn away from the action, what that specifically purifies is the environmental result. So in terms of karma, in general, we have ripening results. We have results that concord with the cause. And then environmental results, which relate to the resources and the environment in terms of the place where we live. So, for example, if one is in a place or country which is kind of a pleasant place to live with many favorable conditions, that the fruit trees, the orchards grow and fruit, the fields give rise to their crops. That experience or living in that place arises from previously accumulated virtuous karma. And we see that in some countries there are very few favorable conditions. The one mentioned before, Geshe mentioned before, was rain falling at the right time and in the right amounts and so forth. That in some countries the rains don't come at the right time or don't fall. They the crops fail, the fruit trees fail, and there are many adverse circumstances, and that those characteristics of the environment are a environmental result of the people of that place. And so that this power of determining to turn away from a non-virtuous actions acts to purify non-virtuous environmental karma, so that one is born in a place with a good environment with many kind of excellent qualities.
Hotel ta tanda ganzo lumbat penan New Zealand tau lumbat ina ta pe tenkian zombo che ta tuwa chi yunjong ta tuntule pe chi kibo ta me to ta tuwa xin tuntul gana mongpa kia ta xin to tuntul kia ta tina ganzo yawa nga me kiwe le chi ki tante mi te rwa tinga te chi ganzo te long chi ko rwa.
Yes. So, for example, in New Zealand, as a country that has many favorable conditions, we had good resources. There are kind of the places of the kind of flowers and crops that ripen, and other fruit trees and so forth. And so this is a virtuous environment, an environment result that arises from virtue.
Otu se tere te kala ta nyebo kunchi ki topki tikpa khar tikpe mikiwe tikpe tebo khar thage yorsana ta dire te taji cheba gyuthen la karsa gyuthen ki tebo tala cheba gyuthen te taji namar sunchi be toke taswa.
Right.
Ha nyawa gyuthen te te thado re la warwa nyawa gyuthen te pena mikiwe le ki nyawa gyuthen la pena soche to machine lamba la soba soche vena se tuwa ne ma wala soba to re tawa
Yes.
ani page machine lamba to zena ne che ta juno lo chulo soba to the page kon bohwa
Yes.
che ma zomba khatu na chi omi khaje kale khatu kamne mu saba to atre to hata to to jirba.
Yes.
Ota tena teshi me ta tere te kajeta ota te nyambo kuncho ke to nyongwa gyutu pe ane ta adore setwe te chite pa ibele ki chima maung bala nga to kewa kawa tsash lang ba ina tela pe kibele ki nyongwa gyutu nto me tseri wa longcho chewa la soba to ta tante pusun soba yungde yungurwa.
Yes. Okay. And then in terms of the power of the antidote, whatever negativity one is purifying through applying the antidote, this purifies the experiential aspect of the results that concord with the cause. So we have the general division of results that concord with the cause, and we purify the actions associated with as results of that concord with cause through the power of regret, and then the experiences of results that concord with the cause is purified by the antidote. And so, for example, with killing, the experiential results that concord with the cause would be having a short lifespan or many illnesses, with the cause being stealing, that one would lack resources and material wealth. It would remain scarce, and you might put great effort into gathering material wealth and still not be able to. So this is experiential karmas that results that concord with the cause. So that by applying the antidote, this is the aspect of karma we purify, and this means that in the future, if one taking birth under the power of virtuous karma, then one's experiences that concord with the cause would be positive in terms of long life, great material resources, excellences in terms of your material resources and so forth.
어두스 딱한지 톱시 차톰 체네 딕바 타야 여바 먼저 배치랑가나 데레 배치랑게나 아니 산제 셰슈베 갑돌라 세미트와 여와 세미트와 미통다치 세 코라 기베신이 미기베신이 다테네 미통다치 세네티기 아네페 좀무테 켈라타네테 체네 켈라타부토레스 미기베신이 그래 미국에도 그저 고구세네 시수다 산제다 제 산제 도와지 신하게 도와지 페게도라 그 산제 세가요 지나네 산제 세마도네 그 산제 둘르바 둘네 제마 결혼 체와 결혼 도시네 제마 그 다주 세다란 다주 메트가 더가 있어버와 제단테 디바 마다나 그 다주 메트가 토사 토야 거래요 말봐 어다테 단당도 공부로도 있단다 시티나네 봐 시티나라 관심을 밤에 교가다 진에 바다 템반이 주나 나와 진짜도 원함세대 가고 세팅 통대 대제시스 다니마다 디밤에 교 마바사시원에 진짜 샤동 진에 도시나 다네베 자마차도에 요래 신신에 봐요 차네 바다 템바스나 다 주방에 밤마치 받지는 세월와 신에 바다 템바지다 안에도 다와 진짜 다와 진짜 되는 그 임페미션 다와 세부터 이번에시 디버 다도에 열에서 됐대 안다 세무통하다 또 스페셜화 호도스.
Okay, so that through using the four opponent powers, we are able to purify negativity. And an example that's often used is at the time when the Buddha was abiding, there was the person known as Angulimala, who had been told by a negative teacher that if he killed 1,000 people and used the bones of their thumbs to create a necklace, he would attain liberation. And he had killed 999 people and was looking to kill the 1,000th, and at that time met the Buddha on the road and wished to kill him. But the Buddha subdued his mind and became a student and then a fully ordained monk. And it is said that he attained arhatship. And so that would have not been possible without the purification of negativity. And similarly, the Master Nagarjuna says in the letter to a friend that even if one creates much negativity, then one who purifies conscientiously and relies on being conscientious in terms of not continuing to create those actions are purified in the same way that the moon obscured by clouds, the clouds that obscure the autumn moon clear away and the moon shines brightly. So in terms of purifying negativity in a kind of a strong Tibetan custom is the reciting of the 35 Buddha confession prayer and at the same time making prostration. So you see that many people do this. And so with the four opponent powers are complete within the 35 Buddha practice, and having kind of known it by heart and then offering full length prostrations while reciting it is a kind of a common practice. Yes.
peche share kabuchan sima, wachila sacha dwachi kawaina chila chi chene pe tungsha dhyane chashu seshar sigorwa.
No.
Tene chashu dhyane tiba thade insarwa, tsu gombala tsu ju de peche kharta na peche share dunga sewa chade.
Yes.
Tu chene pe o tere lukyu tishta yor.
In a similar way, and there are many life stories like that, but one particular one was a Mongolian monk at Goman who was called Geshe, and this he was at Goman before Tibet was invaded, and at the monastery he didn't have a very good understanding and was not able to understand when studying the texts, and at this certain point he went to a place and did many prostrations and recitations of the 35 Buddha practice, and through that purified karma. And then after that, when he returned to the monastery, he was able to understand all the texts very clearly. Yes. Okay. So in general, in the 35 Buddha practice, this the four opponent powers are complete, and this was a practice that J. Rinpoche used first for purification and made many prostrations too while reciting this practice. And it is said after he had a direct vision of all the 35 Buddhas, and so from that, the Tankas in the Gelugpa tradition use the colors and the mudras and so forth in accordance with that direct vision of J. Rinpoche's. Okay, so that in terms of the recitation of the 35 Buddha prayer, this text itself is from the Sutra of the Buddha, so it is the teaching of the Buddha. But in terms of the Gelugpa tradition arising from J. Rinpoche's advice, there is addition of the one word of Deshin Sherpa or Tathagata that J. Rinpoche kind of put in place the use of this word, the Tathagata, Deshin Nyingbo, the Tathagata, and going through the names of the 35 Buddhas as a sign of respect. And so you find that as it is recited in the Gelugpa tradition, whereas in the Kagyu and Nyingma traditions, they do not use that initial word of the Tathagata. Okay, so then in terms of the 35 Buddha practice, it's quite a long practice to memorize and make prostrations, and advice is also given that to make prostrations and just use these 4 lines from the King of Prayers, long overpowered by attachment, aversion, ignorance, countless evils I have committed with acts, body, speech, and mind. Each and every one of these I now confess.
남지 대샤 지도 걸어 초가 되었지 간도 지샤 동요 지샤 이와
nos,
지샤데 지단 지샤데 르벤 파워 숨으로 르벤 파워 스도 걸어 곰벌루도 길로마치 바요 르벤 파워디 어타다르 곰벌루도 올로마 코라 타부 무티 파르와
nos,
무티 파체니 아니 제마 아레 데와당 아레 데와타 소바체니 아레 데와기 소바체니 코나페 낭베 소바팜네 아레 데와당 마 낭베 추 마가와체니 낭베 페차도 사이올라 감베 살샤 감베 냄 도시도라 아니 페체치 마 가서 살바 샤기 도나이 야드바치 코 동사도바치 레데가서와
nos,
아코 예체 코 뭐지 페체체도 페체테나 산지 롱데 서와
nos,
마음발라텐데 고블루도 마아레 데와스와테 주레 대다 염도 때 무티바티 코라 미다테 때 소바스워스테 코 테네 하산네 와
nos,
하산네 테레손데 테네타 우훌라스네타 라마도지 템베침볼라 소바 지샤데 때문에 다가라는 것좀 전에 테네손데 지샤데 타레세오라 지샤스도 지샤바세요 들어와
nos. Okay, so that then, in terms of purification and negativity, there is also what is called as the general confession prayer, which was composed by the master. I can't remember his Sanskrit name. He was a student of Nagarjuna, Master Nagarjuna. At first, he was a non-Buddhist practitioner who engaged in debate with Aryadeva, and losing that debate, he threw the Buddhist texts on the ground and stamped on them. And then there was one text that, as much as he tried, he could not do that too. And when he looked at it, it was specifically a prophecy of the Buddha that in the future that Nagarjuna's student Aryadeva would debate with a non-Buddhist practitioner. And seeing that prophecy, he was amazed. And from that, he arose. He composed this text of confession, which becomes, alas, lama I can't do it off the top of my head. So anyway, it begins the general confession prayer. And so it has that name because it covers kind of the general range of confession.
entonces tadi tanda de chisha sunge loba pao dang are de para soba de la lo yuchi or da lo yusa da dong or dong. There's a story.
Yes.
Tatu tatu di kabla tanda are tanda loba pao di mute pa kare tanda ming thing e famous mute pa kare ko pe mute pa kheba shimbu shibi re do.
Yes.
Te nalanda la soba yo ne ro.
Yes.
Tatu di kabla jaga tu pe mute pa da 나반이 전에 소바전에 다 지단 소바 다 소바데 말아 타바 칸에 토다 거르다와
Yes.
디 거르셔다와
Yes.
다티 소바즈도 때네페 티캅게 날렌다 페 나베 결혼때 참아 팜네 와
Yes.
팜네 아니 페 참아 결혼 나베 날렌다게 나베 결혼 참아 치료벌라 페 규도치게서와
Yes.
근데 파라치라 그다 뒤도 공부를 다리야 대와도 봐 야갈 호초를 쉬었어와
Yes.
또 와치 렌치 단지 다트니 아니 다 공부를 다리야 대와 지다 고치다 아래 공부를 봐 텐데 쉬어있어와 아 아니 공부를 마다네 아래 대와 또 공부를 로마르와 아래 대안에 다키라 뭐디 바디 팜 이메 하고문다 팜트가 이 무티 바나시 렌게게 카라 남베 시셔지는 알 렌게 다시 당쇼스네
Yes.
공부로도 그송로와
Yes.
아니 아래 대박이 공부로도라 아예 공부로도 기타 무티 베기 다 치르베 주다 나시 지네 켈랑 거와
Yes.
안테르 아래 대박이 바다세 다네 남베 슈스 고니 쪼바치네 파라치라페 공부로도 렌게 메바차니 아래 대박이 그런 함고디 비치네 공부르르기 골 코스음지 코시아세
Really?
셈페 제 공부르르 거기 봐줘도 렌자게 때 모티바치 인삼데 예서와
No.
함고디 비는 공부르르 골 코스음지 코시아레서 코스음지 코스음지 거기서 거셔다 아래 공부르르 왔다 때다 디스타크라 탑다 토사리스 그런 탑사리 얘네 그러나 발제 준 것도 발제 준 사리스도 다 아래 저다다 아래도와 다 레벨 페 먹어서 나도고서 코라치니 람칼라 미치기 와지 미메버지 고미롱도 미롱도 갈라 단다 아래다 고창주 선바지 만도 갈라 미치롱게 전나 다 시버지 베가워치는 미롱가는 가르는 대셔와 미치 대셔서로 미치들에 때 미롱게 된 거는 지나다 되기도 와도치래도 되기도 와치래도 되기도 와고 미디 팔로네 아래대와 파페서도 갈라 잡로 찍다도 갈라 맞죠 미디 코란 배죠 맞죠 미디 도갈라 사 도갈라 돈이 배 미디 메어서션 어때든 치사 대전에 아래대와라 미치 요 말와 아래치 미 남유간도 고베나라 미치 마다 메겔 아래대와서 민다고 그래 민도 따고 그래 어두스네 아니 아래대와 파페인 칭칭했더니 단다데 무디바데 둘네테 미디바데 제마코페 낭바차 교바케네 페 코란 낭발라 코르바타 바텔 교바케네 날 지샤데송 제마코페 umbaludagi shaplato leben pause pe meseke bachimbocha ngagi pe shumangbo zamyorwa oda leben pause ade naga bodhi sakhimela
Naga Bodhi.
naga bodhi
Okay.
are naga bodhi.
Okay. So so that there is a story about Aryadeva, and this is Naga Bodhi is the master power, that at that time he was Naga Bodhi was a greatly learned non-Buddhist teacher, and who came to Nalanda to debate the monks. And in that time, debates between Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions were not just kind of any old topic. They all related to how one would attain liberation. And there's a tradition: if you lose, you have to adopt the spiritual tradition of the victor. And at that time, in Nalanda, many of the Buddhist monks had lost to this non-Buddhist Naga Bodhi, and thus having to adopt non-Buddhist spiritual practice. And they sent a message to Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, who were in the south, staying in the south at that time, asking Nagarjuna to come to the monastery to debate with Naga Bodhi. And Nagarjuna said to Aryadeva, I think you could go and defeat this non-Buddhist master, but let us practice by doing a debate, and you take the position of Buddhists and I will take the position of the non-Buddhist traditions. And so Nagarjuna debated with all the assertions of the non-Buddhist traditions, and Aryadeva taking the position of the Buddhist traditions. And at a point, Nagarjuna was unable to give a debate response to Aryadeva, and so Aryadeva had won the debate. And kind of thinking of Nagarjuna as being like a non-Buddhist debater, he took his shoes off, and there was a tradition: you pass them three times round the head of your opponent. And so he did that to Nagarjuna, and so then Nagarjuna said, well, you will be able to defeat this person, but you will meet with obstacles, because that wasn't very auspicious. And so Aryadeva went to travel from the south to Nalanda. And at a point, he saw a person who was a blind person who was begging to be given an eye. And that blind person was actually kind of a manifestation of a mischievous demon. And but Aryadeva, seeing this person begging for an eye, was very pleased to be able to give an eye, and gave him an eye. But then as he went on his journey and looked back, he saw this mischievous demon not making any use of the eye, but simply put it on the ground and smashing it with a stone. And after that, Aryadeva was only had one eye. And in the monastery, when we have people with just one eye, we used to call that we would give them the nickname of Aryadeva. Anyway, so he came and defeated the non-Buddhist Nagara Bodhi, who then adopted the Buddhist traditions and generated strong regret to his disparaging of the Dharma, and composed the General Confession prayer. And later on went on to become a great Buddhist scholar and composed many texts, including texts on Tantra. Loss. So that completes the limb of purification and negativity, and we go on to acts of, to the verse of rejoicing.
Sangai Kwadi, Chuchu Kawa, Chuchu Shibe Kawa, Sanje Tamche, Tigala Chanchu Simba Tamche, Tigala Ranje, Ranje, Tachumbatan, Rangelo by Samatigo, Ranje Kaibaja. And Tigala Niente, Lopata Meloba, Niente Lopata Melovas, Niente Tachumbata, Niente Lam. Tachumbata, we need some to do. She Tigala, Lama Shuki Kansa, Arba. Lama Mushe Kansa, Danga to Kansa, Naran to Tudora. But the Kansanga give us some of the give us some money. Yaburi sing Jesuit and she said,
Okay, so rejoicing. So the verse in the perfections of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Arhats training and beyond, and in the latent goodness of every living being, I lift up my heart and rejoice. So that it is referred to as rejoicing in the virtue of the 5 types of beings. And so the 5 being the Buddhas of the 10 directions, so all the Buddhas, 1, all the Bodhisattvas, 2, and then the solitary realizer. So this is the Arhats, the solitary realized training and beyond. So the solitary realizers on their paths, and those who have attained the Arhat as solitary realizer, and the hearers. So that's 3. And the hearers, again, those in training on the paths, and those who have gained the attainment of Arhatship. And then all the beings who have not entered the paths. So that we would be included in all those beings. So one rejoices or appreciates the virtues of all those beings.
Chitan Jesuiran Chebe, Jesuiran Chepe, Carriers and Adire. Jesuiran Cheba Latene, Ale Mazu Kewachimanam Susenada, Yamane Sanje Beckham, so Sanje Kususiduala Pe, Sanje Beckham, Sanje Kusula Tama, Jeto Future, Tona Mitimba Meba Sajara, Pe Jeto, today, large Jogre Cigarwa. Sanje could do on the meeting with Sensanta, Chick Sensanta, pay jet to the she which pay jet over Yorba. Or that today, large jazz, Pacha Shagre said Chigre. Yibata just a little Tadog in Yimboa. Tadog in Yimboto, the Chigre. And they take Anata. Beba chungu gewa lapchen sabase le kale chimbo jamo ko achene pe gewa lapchen bo saide ta
Los.
yesu yarangi laje chirwa hodus chen yarangi kechu chirwa hodus
Okay. So then, in terms of the benefits of this practice of rejoicing, that on independence on rejoicing, the benefits in future lives and specifically in the attainment of Buddhahood, that the form of the Buddhas kind of are pleasing, that it is said they're not kind of disharmonious to everyone. They're pleasing to see that all being glorious with the major and minor marks, and that the practice of rejoicing places imprints to have those qualities. And then secondly, it is an antidote to jealousy. And third, it with kind of small effort, one can accomplish very great virtue.
Utuzuri ta Jesu yana chaya shiragi lelawo ta chimi lega ya chikpe semche mambo le pen toya dawa tene chen ode ya bore asane semne yigi tene samte chirwa yigi tene yigi tene ya bore samsa samte ota tira te tagara te lelawo shirarwa tosi chata te kala tela kala chembo jia kwa ya keme dwarwa kala chembo jia kwa ya keme mara beba te pe chik chanchu sepa tu zogi sepa tende la nga chanchu sepa ta sanje tu zogi sepa la chesu yana china pe misi sonam sagyo sorwa di chigre te rang le chitang keche shigi na tanda ngi tanda yagi te pecha tenzo na la ito tenzo to namgyu ne nga zo she tegre rang le tokpa toa chigi gewa la chesu yana chena rang la te gewa ti cheka togore se war ta sanje te chanchu sepa tu zogi tanda 또 초전에 십에 산계다 chanchu sambatu zogi gewale chesu yana china ta tido gewa tu shibiche pe nga zo mangpo thubgar warwa tere rangda toba nyamba chiki gewale chesu yana china teda nyamba thubgar yasi gore rangda rangle toba memba ta chik rangla chiti si toba tisi shwe nyamle cheke shiraki tisi chik gewa dawa chik rewe re na tende kunzo gewa checho gore tende gewa chikirwa tere chela chesu yana china tele rabe thubgar yasi gore o techido tape Jesu yarante pe mesege dere so sayla.
Yes. So that then, in addition to that, if we think of all the actions of the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas and we rejoice in those, then we are creating kind of an extraordinary vast merit, positive potential. And in general, this is explained in the text, that when one rejoices in the actions of someone who has a greater realization than oneself, then one would gain half of the merit of their actions. So if we think of all the actions of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, when we rejoice in their actions, we accomplish or gather many virtues. And then if one rejoices in the actions of someone who has the same level as realization of oneself, one gains an equal merit. And if one rejoices in the actions of someone with a kind of a lesser realization of oneself, perhaps someone who is not engaged in Dharma practice, then one can, although they gain merit, one's rejoicing in their actions can even gain a greater merit. So that without difficulty, we can, through the practice of rejoicing, we can gather great merit.
Otus gewa cheta le lagu tuwa tu se ta chitane ganzo mi shen kansa sugi pe gewa chepa ina tela pe ta gawa gom gore gawa gom che suyo che gore ta te pe ganzo pe tu sun gore tanda pena pe bhuki leka yaga chi karita wa che ina ta padi gagirwa padi gagirwa pa pe auto wachana ta me pusu bhuki leka yaga wachana ta shiyo chi pe gagirwa o te na shin che ne pe 마라도 semche thamche to the sanje komba thamde kelang to se dijidola semche sudai one chene nga jo khonso ro che orde nga to ro che mo khoran su ge che gewata sa ya bo chene ko dewata ko ta te pe ya bore sam koreste o tende yang ko sam go yo tende yang se it tend to che go yo su do pe jana.
So we can create merit very easily with rejoicing, and that so that whoever the other person is who creates virtue, that we should rejoice and be happy at their actions. And the illustration is that if the father would always like whatever good actions that his son would do, he would be very happy. And in a similar way, we have determined to attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And that with that motivation, we should be helping other sentient beings, but then other sentient beings, even without help from us, create virtue and causes of happiness. And so seeing that, one would always be happy and kind of appreciative of the virtue they create. And so it's very good to remember this. Okay, so this is what I want to cover in rejoicing. We don't need to go into more detail. Okay, so the following Sunday we will complete the 3 remaining limbs of requesting the turning of wheel of Dharma, requesting masters to abide, and then dedication. And so people can always email me questions. So the short mandala: by directing to the field of Buddhas, this mandala is fed with a base of flowers, saffron water, and incense, adorned with Mount Mary, all evenings we left this field. From my 2 collections, vast space that I have amassed with working with this practice for a great length of time, I have become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach the state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life and Manjushri, and find the best of complete great heart. I please all Buddhas by practicing well, using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, and clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the point of the path I have discerned them. I uphold Buddha's teaching for a very long time, my heart going out with great compassion in whatever directions the most precious teachings have not yet spread. Once spread or declined, they expose this treasure of happiness and aid. And the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by this gradual path to enlightenment, completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their spiritual children. They all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity, make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths, never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhists. Whenever someone makes the effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he or she always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. May the precious supreme mind of Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.